Homeless homicide over spilled wine in bushes and $3,000 raises safety concerns for residents in South Bellevue. What do we got going on here? Yeah, we got a little housing first action. Let's get into it. Here we go. So Jeremy Harris did a really good just a little over 9-minute segment on this. And the reason we're covering this is because there are so many issues here that we talk about on a regular basis. So before I continue babbling, let's get into it. Here we go. This is a great piece, by the way.
Only homicide case this year, but there are still a lot of questions, not only about the...
Okay, hold on.
There's been an arrest in the city of Bellevue's only homicide case this year, but there are still a lot of questions, not only about the criminal case against him, but also about safety concerns in the neighborhood. I'm Como News reporter Jeremy Harris. I'm going to walk you through the criminal charges and then tell you how the city of Bellevue is responding to some of those concerns from neighbors. Well, let's start with our suspect. His name is Samuel Hitchcock. He is 28 years old, and we first heard about him back in August. And that's when Bellevue police put out the word saying they needed help tracking him down because he was a suspect in a homicide case. What we know about that case is it was back on July 30th, and there were some folks who were living in the Eastgate area of Bellevue. And there are two facilities designed to help the homeless. There's one called the Porch Light, which is a homeless shelter for adult men. Then there's also a Plymouth housing facility, which provides supportive housing for people who are coming out of homelessness. Now, when those facilities opened, there were some concerns from neighbors who said they did not trust that those agencies running those facilities were going to be able to keep a handle on the concerns for the surrounding communities and the impacts on that. Well, we now know that those concerns were at least in part substantiated because two people who had been kicked out of the Porch Light shelter, they were camping in the bushes of a nearby office park.
Camping in the bushes. Camping in the bushes. So housing first, kicked out, booted out of Seattle. We've covered this topic before, this story before, but this is so much more of a deep dive that's what I want to focus on. Bellevue is, 10 miles from downtown Seattle, and it's separated by a big body of water, Lake Washington, worlds apart. And yet this is the seep over from Seattle that everybody in Bellevue is like, no, keep your homeless and your shenanigans and your murder and your rapes and all that stuff. Keep those over at Seattle. Well, it's here, folks.
That's where investigators say two men, Samuel Hitchcock and then the victim in this case, Jason Clark, they were camping in the bushes and they had been laying down in the bushes drinking alcohol in the early morning hours. It's estimated this happened
as you do
when one of them was spilled alcohol on the other. According to a witness who was there, they said that Hitchcock had spilled alcohol on the victim, who is Clark, and that started an argument between them. The witness says that argument escalated to the point where Hitchcock started beating the victim and eventually walked out of the area after taking what detectives described was $3,000 that the victim, Jason Clark, had on him. Now, it's important to note, he had $3,000 in cash on him, and he was sleeping in a bush in the Eastgate neighborhood of Bellevue. Really?
I honestly can't help myself but to laugh. It's so preposterous. Murder. Horrific. But that's what Bellevue is dealing with because of a housing first community. A couple of them that have basically been jammed down the residents' throats. Here we are. Oh, what could go wrong? Well, homeless shenanigans. I just want to watch that little clip again here for a second.
$3,000 in cash on him, and he was sleeping in a bush in the Eastgate neighborhood of Bellevue. Really a concerning set of facts, but it also has criminal implications because prosecutors not only charged Hitchcock with murder for killing Jason Clark, they also charged him with robbery for taking that money off of him. Hitchcock, according to Bellevue police, fled the area. The victim was discovered later that morning by a security guard at the office park who was making her rounds. She found him in a bush, called for police. They showed up. He was dead. The medical examiner's office determined that he was killed by blunt force trauma, that multiple blunt force trauma suggesting that he was beaten to death. Bellevue police put the word out, we need help locating Samuel Hitchcock. He eventually was located. It took about a month, though. He was just located this week in the Portland area where detectives say that he had previous ties.
Okay. He skedaddled to Portland because where better to fit in as a murder fugitive than Portland, Oregon? Tells you everything you need to know. Hey, let's just do a couple 3-hour bus ride, whatever, get a ride, hitch a ride, whatever, down to Portland. I'll hang out down there. But the key difference between this happening in Seattle and happening in Bellevue is Bellevue didn't defund their police, and Bellevue has the resources to go after this kind of thing. Now, this is preventable by not having these kind of communities in Bellevue, but they get shoved down our throat at the county level, and you're just left with, okay, we'll bend over and we'll take it. And what does taking it mean? Well, somebody gets murdered in your community. Murder. Granted, this is the first murder in Bellevue in 2025. We just don't really have murders. Well, we'll have a couple of just one-off weird type, whatever. But this is the first murder this year, and it involves 2 homeless guys in a bush spilling out vodka, I think it was, with $3,000 in the one dude's pocket. I mean, tell me any of this makes sense. Does any of this make sense? No, it doesn't. Including having a bunch of whacked out homeless dudes on drugs, drinking, living in your community with zero barrier to entry. Come on in, do your drugs, it's fine.
Now, anytime that criminal charges are filed, so that's what we have here, the prosecutors, they make a statement for why they think there should be bail imposed in this case. And that's where they sort of briefly lay out sort of the seriousness of the allegations. And there's definitely some things in the prosecutor's statement here that stick out to me. So that's what I'm going to read for you now. So according here, we have Abney Burns, who's one of the senior deputy prosecuting attorneys at the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Here's what she says. She says, the defendant is accused of beating a man to death with his hands for the money in his pocket. The victim was known to the defendant. The fatal beating was witnessed by a vulnerable wheelchair-bound witness. Now the prosecutor goes on. Given the extreme level of violence and the lack of impulse control exhibited by the defendant, the state has community safety concerns if the defendant is released. The defendant had extensive police contacts in the area recently, including several arrests. She goes on to list some of the warrants, but then what really sticks out to me here. The state believes that a bail of $3 million is appropriate given the extreme level of violence the state is alleging was perpetrated by the defendant in this robbery turned murder. He beat the victim to death for the money in his pocket and told him he was an idiot for having money on him as he beat him to death. Hitchcock is a known flight risk as evidenced by the recent warrants for failure to appear in Seattle Municipal Court. These open cases both involve violence and use of weapons, which further raises concerns for community safety. So the prosecutors asked for $3 million bail. That will be addressed when Hitchcock is brought back to King County from Portland, which likely will happen sometime in the next few weeks. Again, he was just barely arrested this week in the Portland area. Now, as far as the charges go out, there's some stuff also here that stands out to me in that there was a witness who was with Hitchcock and Clark as they were in the bushes drinking. The witness gave very, very good information to police about exactly what happened. One of the things that sticks out to me, the witness told police during the altercation that the witness heard Hitchcock tell Clark he was an idiot for carrying so much money. Now, where did this money come from? How does a homeless person sleeping in a bush end up with $3,000 in their pocket? Well, investigators wanted an answer to that. They went back to the staff at the nearby homeless shelter. That staff told them that they had actually given Clark a ride to the bank where he withdrew the money. He paid a $200 bill at a self-storage facility, and then presumably he was left with around the $3,000 in cash in his pocket. Obviously.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a second. Have you tried withdrawing $3,000 from your ATM machine lately and you're not homeless? Yeah. I mean, no, not going to happen, right? I got to make arrangements with my bank for even just a cash withdrawal of that amount. Just, hey, you know what? I need $3,000 in cash. Oh, good Lord. What's it for? We're going to need to have you sign. We're going to have to get a bank manager's approval on this. I mean, $3,000, that's a lot. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to spend it on? You know, it's not that bad, but you're just not walking into a bank and getting $3,000 out, especially a homeless dude. I mean, story doesn't make sense. It does not make sense, but whatever. Maybe it wasn't from the ATM necessarily. He was in the bank. He got it. Maybe he wrote a check. He cashed a check. I don't know. But leaving it at that level, I'm just kind of like, what? I'm still left with what is going on here. And then what was his motivation for having $3,000 in cash on him as a homeless person sleeping in the bushes? He's got to know that that's a liability that eventually he was killed for, right? He was killed for. So all of this is just, he was an idiot for having so much cash and that he was going to take it from him. It's the law of the jungle, right? Whoever's bigger, stronger, gonna survive. Sorry, you're a moron. I'm beating you to death and I'm walking off with your money and I'm gonna hightail it down to a strip club where I'm gonna make it rain in Portland. Wild.
And then presumably he was left with around the $3,000 in cash in his pocket. Obviously concerning, any amount of cash carrying with you is going to make you a vulnerable target. But in this case, apparently, according to the charges, Hitchcock knew that the victim had this money on him when he beat him to death, took the money, and then left. And in fact, the witness even told investigators that Hitchcock had offered him some of the money that he had taken off the victim after beating him to death. Really concerning allegations.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the murderer offered the dude in the wheelchair some money. Hey, be real quiet. Just don't say anything. Don't say anything. Here's $300. Get some new tires for your wheelchair. Get some new, whatever for your wheelchair. I mean, is that what we're doing? Apparently, that's what he offered. Guy didn't take it. And the guy's, credible witness. Yeah, he offered me money. Ugh.
So you can imagine, listen, a murder in any community is going to raise concerns by people who are in that community. But here in the Eastgate area of Bellevue, there's even more to the story, because when these two facilities, Porchlight and Plymouth Housing, opened a couple of years ago, the neighbors were very concerned because they said they were worried that there was going to be spillover into the community and that problems in this shelter were going to basically pour out into the community. According to the charges, that's exactly what happened here, because investigators say that both men, Clark and Hitchcock, had recently been kicked out of the Porchlight homeless facility, but they chose to stay in that area. And in this case, they'd
been kicked out. What kind of behavior did they do to get kicked out? They doing drugs? Were they drinking? That's what forced him to go into the bushes. I mean, you've got a low to no barrier entry project and you get kicked out of that. I mean, you got to work at that, right? You got to do something, because you got to be an idiot. Like, yeah.
They were camping in the bushes. When I went out there shortly after the murder happened, I was talking with some of the security guards, some of the businesses there that surround these homeless facilities, and they told me the same thing. They said, we're constantly dealing with people who are using drugs. We're dealing with people who are trespassing. A lot of safety concerns there in the Eastgate area of Bellevue. Well, that came to a head this week when the Bellevue City Council called the leadership of these facilities in front of the city council, basically to give a progress report on how things are going. And you can imagine members of the community showed up and told them not well.
I have the police scanner on every day because we're just terrified of what's next.
Repeated concerns voiced by the community have not been fully and timely addressed by Porchlight or the city.
They are concerned about safety issues, not just at the homeless campus itself, but also in the surrounding community. And certainly the murder did not help those concerns. As those neighbors say, more needs to be done to control who's coming in and what's going on around the shelters. Even if this wasn't on the shelter property itself, it was right next to it. It was an office park that directly is adjacent to that homeless facility where this murder occurred. And so that was one of the main concerns there. We heard from the neighbors neighbors who spoke before the city council. The leadership there for the facilities acknowledged to the city council, we know there are safety concerns. They're working to improve security, but certainly that did little to belay the concerns from the neighbors, many of whom have turned to documenting a lot of the concerns online and sharing that information among those neighborhood groups. So where does everything go from here? Well, in the specific murder case involving Samuel Hitchcock, like I said, he'll have to be brought back to King County, extradited from Oregon. Then they'll decide if a judge grants that $3 million bail request. Then the criminal case against him will proceed. As for the neighborhood, those neighbors tell me their plan is to keep the pressure on the city council to put the pressure in turn on the homeless facilities, both Porchlight and then Plymouth Housing, to come up with a better safety plan to make sure that they're addressing those things like drug use, like people who are maybe trespassed or kicked out of the homeless shelter, which in this case, both suspect and victim appear to be, and then also working with Bellevue Police to make sure that they have a presence in that area. Still yet to be seen what's going to happen, but we'd love to hear what are your thoughts? What do you think the city of Bellevue should be doing, and how would you feel if a facility like this for the homeless came into your neighborhood, and what would you want to see done to make sure that there aren't safety concerns and certainly acts of violence going on around that facility? Let us know in the comments, and then you can also reach out to me again. And I'm Jeremy Harris with Como News. You can email me or find me on social media. My tag is @JeremyHarrisTV, or you can email me jeremyharris@comonews.com. Thanks.
My number one thought to that is do not let this type of housing enter your community, period. Do whatever it takes to push back on that, because there is no level of security or, additional layers of protection that can help when these Looney Tune whacked out drug addicts come into the community. They've been living wild, and you see the way that they live. You see just the shenanigans that they're up to. They're mentally unstable and they're addicts. Oftentimes both, and they're prone to behavior that is not normally acceptable in typical communities, especially Bellevue. And that's why this one rocks the boat so much, because Bellevue has not had this type of, influence prior to this type of housing first. And that's what it is. Hey, man, we'll give you housing. You don't have to get off the drugs. You can do whatever you want. Just don't get caught. That's bottom line, right? These guys got caught and they got booted. Okay? And then what does the project do? They're just sleeping in the bushes. It's fine. They're going to be okay. Nah, the facility probably didn't even know about it. They didn't even know the guys were sleeping in the bushes until somebody, security guard, hey, that dude over there, he doesn't look well. He doesn't look well at all. And the guy's been dead for a while, right? Horrific. Explain that to somebody's parents, to the parents of that guy, right? Explain that. Absolutely brutal. How did my son die? Well, he was sleeping in the bushes. He had $3,000 in his pocket, and his buddy spilled some vodka or something, and then he got killed, and he had his money taken. And now the murder is under investigation in Bellevue, Washington. First murder of the year. Some wild stuff. But you know what? This is what you expect when you bring this type of community, when you bring this type of housing, which is housing first, into your community. This is what you get. This is not shocking. This is normal. This is normal. I shouldn't say the murder part is normal, because that isn't normal, but that is at the upper end of what you can expect for outrageous behavior from facilities that don't require sobriety as part of them getting housing. Because that's not how housing first works. It works, hey, we'll stabilize you in housing and then we'll try and get you off the stuff. Clearly, these guys weren't off the stuff. They had no intentions of getting sober because they got kicked out for whatever reason. Probably had to do with drugs, probably had to do with alcohol. Who knows, right? Who knows? And it's kind of neither here nor there, because one guy's in jail and one guy's dead. Bellevue, Washington. How'd that housing first work out? Well, not so good in August. Not so good. So this is a prime example of what you don't want to have come to your community when community leadership tells you it's going to be fine. What could go wrong? Well, dude gets killed in the bushes drinking vodka and $3,000 stolen. That's pretty bad. Yeah. Those are what's known as shenanigans. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next segment. Bye for now.